In the same war, one German soldier carried a pistol polished like a luxury watch. Another, at the end, was handed a weapon that looked like it was welded from scraps, because there was nothing else left. That is the shock of this story. The war did not only destroy cities, it reshaped the weapons, and the hands that held. Tonight, you will hear Germany World War II arsenal as a single arc, from pride to panic, from precision to desperation. Stay to the end, because the final designs are not just weapons. They are evidence of a system collapsing in real time. We start with what sits closest to the body, the sidearm pressed against the ribs. The Luger P8 is the classic profile. Precise, elegant, famous enough that Allied troops often kept it as a trophy. It represented an older belief that craftsmanship could carry prestige into battle, but its beauty hid a problem. It was complex and costly to make, and a long war punishes anything that takes time on the factory floor. So Germany turned to the Walther P38. It was designed to replace the Luger with a pistol that was simpler, cheaper, and tougher in the dirt. It became the standard military sidearm not because it was romantic, but because it could be produced and trusted under pressure. For officers, police, and the Luftwaffe, compact pistols mattered. The Walther PP and Walther PPK were small, discreet, and easy to carry for people who wanted a sidearm without the weight of a full-service pistol. The PPK became linked in popular memory with covert work and close-range decisions made in silence. Germany also pulled older designs back into service when supply tightened. The Mauser C96, the broom handle, with its distinctive wooden holster stock, still appeared, especially with support units. It was a remind. Other pistols filled the gaps. The Mauser HSC was compact and reliable, favored for police and naval use. The Sauer 38H was streamlined and high quality, popular among Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht staff officers. And the Dresem 1907, already aging, served with rear echelon troops and police, a quiet warning that Germany would fire anything that still worked. The MP-38 was the first major German submachine gun of the war, effective, modern, and still built with careful machining. Then the MP-40 followed as an evolution aimed at speed of production, using more stamped parts and fewer time-consuming steps. It became the silhouette people associate with the early German soldier, not because it was perfect, but because it matched the tempo of that moment. Yet Germany kept issuing veterans from the previous war. The MP-18, the first true submachine gun, and the MP-28, its refinement with a box magazine, appeared with garrison units and second-line troops. The MP-34, largely an Austrian design adopted by the SS, was beautifully machined and painfully expensive, a weapon that looked proud but drained resources. The MP-35, often confused with similar models, had a distinctive loading handle that made it feel oddly familiar to men raised on bolt actions. Then the story darkens. Late war weapons stop looking like engineering trophies and start looking like emergency tools. The EMP-44 was a crude attempt at radical simplification. It did not become the standard, but it reveals the mindset of a system cutting corners just to keep firing. And the MP-3008 arrived as a final desperate submachine gun, a cheap copy of the British Sten idea, built fast in the last months. At that point, design was no longer about elegance. It was about surviving the week. Now to the rifles and carbines, the backbone of the infantry, the weapons that carried the war across continents and seasons. The Kar 98K was the standard issue rifle from start to finish, a reliable bolt-action workhorse that served on every front. Alongside it, the older Gewehr 98, longer and earlier in design, still armed reserves and rear units when new rifles were not available. For mountain troops, weight and length mattered. The Gewehr 3340 tons, adapted from Czech designs, was shorter and lighter, preferred by the Gebirgsjäger because it fit the terrain and the climb. It is a small detail that reveals a bigger truth. Geography shapes war as much as ideology does. Germany tried to break free from the limits of bolt action. The Gewehr 41M and Gewehr 41W were early attempts at a semi-automatic infantry rifle. Ambitious, complicated, and often unreliable in combat. And as the war closed in, Germany chased simplification with prototypes. The St. G45M was a late-war attempt to build an assault rifle with less material and effort than the St. G44, using a delayed blowback system that would influence post-war development. At the same time, the Volkssturm needed weapons immediately. The Volkssturmgewehr, VG-15, and related simplified rifles were rushed out for home defense, crude, inconsistent, but available. These were not symbols of strength. They were receipts for collapse, weapons issued to boys and older men when the front lines consumed everything else. If rifles tell you how a war is fought, machine guns tell you how a war is controlled. The MG-34 was a masterpiece of machining and engineering, flexible enough to serve as a light and heavy machine gun, and complex enough to be expensive. It represents early war Germany at its most confident. Then the MG-42 arrived, built for mass production and infamous for its rate of fire. Soldiers called it Hitler Buzzsaw because its sound felt like tearing cloth made of steel. It did not just shoot. It shaped the way men moved, where they dared to breathe, and how long they stayed pinned to the earth. Older, heavy guns still lingered. The MG-8, water-cooled and born in the First World War, guarded static defensive positions. The MG-8-15, a lighter version, followed it into fortress roles. The MG-13, rooted in older designs, served for training and second-line units. Aircraft guns were pulled down to ground level as well. The MG-15 and MG-81, built for the air, were sometimes repurposed when the Luftwaffe found itself fighting on land. And the MG-45 was a fascinating simplified prototype, intended as a successor concept to the MG-42, using less raw material while aiming for extreme performance. Even the prototype sounded desperate, as if the engineers were trying to machine an extra month out of reality. Now we reach the weapons that turn the ground itself into a threat: grenades, mines, and demolition tools. The steel hand granate 24, the iconic stick grenade, is instantly recognizable. Its handle helped soldiers throw farther and reduced rolling after landing. Late in the war, the steel hand granate 43 simplified the design to save time and parts. The iron hand grenade 39, the egg grenade, was compact and easy to carry in quantity. For harder targets, troops used heavier explosive combinations, like bundled charges, meant to concentrate blast against fortifications. And then there was the S-mine, feared by Allied soldiers, designed to detonate at a height that maximized its effect. It was a weapon built to punish a single careless step, and to make every step feel like a question. Against armor, Germany relied on mines like the Teller mine series, often called plate mines, improved over time, and the Regal mine 43, the bar mine, a long rectangular charge effective against tracks. There were unusual machines too. The Goliath was a small, remote-controlled demolition vehicle, driven into enemy positions and detonated to damage fortifications. It looked like a gadget, but it was powered by the same late war logic. Replace manpower with anything that can move forward. Smoke and blinding grenades also played a role. The Blendkorper 1H and Blendkorper 2H were used to create dense smoke and temporarily blind crews, helping infantry move under cover or disrupt a defended position. In close combat, vision can be a life or death switch. Late war mine design reveals another grim direction. The Shoe Mine 42 used low metal construction to make detection harder. Other anti-personnel mines used glass or concrete casings, such as the Glasmine 43 and concrete mines, again aiming to slow and endanger mine clearance. War was no longer only about defeating the enemy, it was about exhausting them. Even grenades were modified. A fragmentation ring could be fitted to increase shrapnel effect, and when specialized anti-tank weapons were missing, defenders sometimes relied on improvised incendiary bottles. The Molotov cocktail, a symbol of how quickly a modern army can be pushed back toward improvised survival. Finally, we end with the tools of silence, knives and bayonets, the last answer when distance disappears. The bayonet 98K was standard for the Kar 98K, carried by infantry trained to use it, even if most prayed they would not. Late-war multi-purpose blades like the bayonet 42 tried to do more than fight, serving as a knife and field tool. The combat knife 42 was a dedicated fighting knife issued primarily to specialized troops for close quarters work. For paratroopers, there was the aviator folding knife, the gravity knife, carried to cut lines, free gear, and survive the chaos of a drop. And at the end came simplified emergency bayonets like the SG-84, stripped to essentials, because even a blade became something the collapsing system struggled to provide. Now listen to what this arsenal is really saying. Early war weapons were precise, proud, expensive. Mid-war weapons were standardized and optimized, built to win production as much as battles. Late war weapons were rushed, simplified, sometimes crude, built to buy time that could not be bought. That is the full story of Germany World War II arsenal. Not only what it fielded, but what the war forced it to become. A Luger P8 feels like confidence in your palm. A Volkssturm rifle feels like a warning. Between them is the sound of industry racing against defeat, and the moment the modern battlefield was born. In your opinion, which type of weapon has had the greatest impact? The precision of the past or the crude effectiveness of the present? Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest videos.